So today we're going to be reviewing the Phillies trade deadline. We're going to talk about the players they brought in, the packages they gave up to get those guys, and how they're going to look for the rest of the season. So the first move they made was with the New York Mets. They traded for left-handed reliever Brooks Raley, who I identified a few weeks ago as a potential target for them. As I mentioned in a previous video, Tanner Banks, he was the guy who they brought in last year, 2 years ago, and last year he was a high-leverage left-handed arm for them. They bring him in for certain pockets of an order where they had tough left-handers that he matched up well against. He was really good in that role. This season he hasn't been the same. 7 ERA, he gets sent down to AAA. Hasn't been up to the bigs since. Seems like they've given up on him. So that was a huge loss for the Phillies. And similarly, Jose Alvarado, he's a guy who they had as one of their eighth inning guys in the past. High leverage, high velocity arm that they knew they can count on. This year he hasn't been anything like that. Once again, he's another guy who's just moved down the pecking order. They can't count on him. And with the injury to Brad Keller for the rest of the season, they're really lacking those eighth inning guys. I mean, Kerkering has been bad recently, but overall he's pretty reliable. They can trust him in the eighth. Tim Mays has been decent, but as I said before, I don't believe the Phillies would trust him to go out there and face Shohei Ohtani in a playoff series. Obviously, Duran holds down the back end of the bullpen. So they needed to add at least an arm to this bullpen, and they added two. So Brooks Raley will definitely get a lot of 7th, 8th inning looks for the Phillies. He'll be used a lot in those pockets of left-handed hitters. They're still going to need Jose Alvarado to turn it around. Tim Mays has been kind of up and down. Overall, he's been reliable, but they definitely could use some more from the left-hand side. And I think that's why Brooks Raley was a perfect pickup. Like I said, didn't trade much to get him. John Spikerman, switch hitting outfielder. He's now the Mets' number 28 prospect. Phillies drafted him 2 years ago in the 3rd round. They thought he was going to be a lot better than he was. He's kind of been a slow developer. He's looked a little bit better recently, but still not what the Phillies kind of expected from him. They traded Luke Gavrish, who's a high A pitcher. Again, not a big price to pay for a guy who's going to be pitching a lot of big innings for this team down the stretch, especially when this core obviously is aging and they needed to make some aggressive moves. And I think this one was a good deal. This is a good deal. I would grade this probably a B+. Brooks Raley, like I said, older guy, a little bit on the lucky end with his advanced numbers, of course. So it's still good business for the Phillies. The guys they got up likely won't ever crack the bigs. If they do, they're not going to be superstars. So it's not like you're getting robbed here while doing business with a rival. So I'd give the Phillies a B+ on that move. I think he'll be a solid arm for them. I don't think he's going to be pitching to a sub-2 ERA for the rest of the season. But still, he's instantly the Phillies' best left-handed reliever. So the next package they did, which was shortly after that Brooks Raley deal actually, was they made a deal with the San Francisco Giants for Caleb Kilian and the big piece of the deadline, Luis Arraez. So starting off with Caleb Kilian, he's another bullpen arm, right-handed, really good player. I mean, he's kind of the opposite of Brooks Raley. He has a 4.17 ERA, but a 3.25 xERA. So pretty obvious he's been getting unlucky. He's got good stuff. He's got a nice fastball that sits at 97 miles an hour, a sinker that sits at 96. He's got good movement to it. He's got a slider and a curveball. They're league average pitches, but overall, he's going to be a velocity guy, a high power guy. The Phillies needed another good right-handed arm. Like I said, Kerkering's been solid. They lost Brad Keller. Jonathan Bolin has been excellent for them. He's really been a revelation. I think prior to the 2-run home run he gave up the other night, he had a sub-1 ERA in the last about 3 months. So he's been a good revelation for them, especially, they traded Matt Strahm, who just got DFA'd yesterday, for him. That was a good deal for the Phillies in the offseason. He's been able to go to the back end of the bullpen with also really good stuff. So now, the main guys, you got obviously Duran in the 9th. Kerkering's going to be a setup man. Brooks Raley's going to be a setup man. Caleb Kilian will probably see some 7th innings. I believe Jonathan Bolin will see some 7th, 8th innings, depending on, who's available on any given night. But it's shaping up to be pretty good. Like I said, Tim Meza now, he's going to be pushed down lower in the pecking order, which, deepens the bullpen, makes them a lot stronger. The bullpen was expected to be a strength of this team, as I mentioned before. They came in with Kerkering, Keller, Alvarado, Banks, Duran. Obviously, they thought that this was going to be a really good bullpen. A lot of those guys haven't panned out, and the Brad Keller injury has kind of weakened the pen. I do think Kilian is a really good pickup as part of this Arraez deal. Obviously, no one's talking about Caleb Kilian in that deal, but I think he's going to be a really good player for the Phillies, and he's got a lot of years of club control left. And you always like to get guys with club control, obviously, especially when they got good stuff like him, and he's been pretty good. So I think the Phillies can rely on him a lot, and I think he'll end up being a really good pickup. Of course, the main part of that deal is Luis Arraez, polarizing player, polarizing move. Luis Arraez, we know what you're going to get from him, right? He's a low swing and miss guy. He doesn't strike out at all. He struck out 21 times this year. You look at our main hitters, our everyday players, Stott, Harper, JT, Bohm. These guys, Kyle Schwarber, these guys have struck out more in the last month than he has all season. So the biggest problem people have with this Phillies lineup was that in the postseason, they were a lot of swing and miss, a lot of chase, a lot of obviously a lot of that was Nick Castellanos chasing sliders away, but ultimately the whole lineup was just not very disciplined. Their approaches were terrible. So in a vacuum, this is a really good pickup, right? This is a guy who batting average, of course, not the stat it used to be, right? No one really talks about batting average that much anymore, but this guy hits 328 with a 811 OPS against righties. So, solid piece there, but the Phillies needed a guy who could hit left-handed pitching. Fortunately for them, he slashes 320, 346, and 445 against lefties. So he's still a really good player against left-handed pitching. He's slightly worse than he is against righties, but it's going to be a big boost to them because you look at the guys like Schwarber and Harper can handle lefties pretty well for left-handed hitters, but Trey Turner as a right-handed bat he's heated up over the past month or so, but he hasn't been the bat you expected him to be. Bohm is one of the worst hitting now first baseman in the league. JT Realmuto clearly has fallen off. So you look at what this team has for left-handed pitching, and it's not much. Edmundo Sosa, he hasn't been a viable platoon option. He's been really bad. Brian De La Cruz, who they just called up, has been really good overall. But it's hard to imagine him being, your 4 or 5 hitter. Same with Derek Hill. He's been really good since they acquired him. But it's hard to imagine that they can, against left-handed pitching, have him bat 5th. So as of right now, the first lineup was with the Arraez last night. They had him at cleanup. It's an interesting decision. We have the league leader in strikeouts at leadoff and the guy with the least strikeouts at cleanup. It's pretty weird. I think that they should. Don't get me wrong. Arraez is really good with runners in scoring position. He hits 400 with an 898 OPS with runners in scoring position. That's really good, obviously. But I think that this team needs to go with the lineup of Arraez at leadoff, Trey Turner batting 2-hole, Harper 3rd, Schwarber cleanup. I think that'd be perfect to get Arraez to set the table. He's going to get a lot of base hits up at the top there. Trey Turner to follow him up. You can rely on him to, steal some bags if he gets on. But you can get 2 guys. When Trey Turner's going well, you have 2 guys at the top there that'll get on pretty often for Schwarber and Harper. And that's what you want. Ultimately, I don't think it's enough because they still have Alec Bohm hitting 5th, and he proved it last night. He came up after Arraez got a big hit with runners in scoring position, and he hit into a double play. That's just what he does. He hasn't been the same bat. Well, he really hasn't been what he was expected to be when he came up. This is a guy who was hyped up to be one of our best hitting prospects. He's been really bad. This year, he's virtually unplayable. You got Dave Dombrowski coming out and saying, well, he's one of the top RBI guys in the league, and we really like him. We think he's a good player. This is just a team that values batting average, RBIs, ERA, kind of stats that don't really tell the whole story. And, that's a conversation for another video of Dave Dombrowski's, failures as the Phillies president of baseball operations. But ultimately, they're stuck now, right? Brian De La Cruz, he's got crazy numbers right now, but he's a good player. He's a solid player, but at the end of the day, he's a quadruple A player. He's too good for triple A. He's not good enough for the big leagues. hopefully he keeps up what he's doing. Hopefully Derek Hill, big grand slam the other night to put the Phillies up 4-3 after being down 3-0. Hopefully he can keep that up. But when you look at the back of the baseball card of these guys, they're older, not too old, but they're older. They've never been these guys that they're playing like right now. So it's kind of hard to expect them to carry that load. Dave Dombrowski said, "Oh, when we looked at the market, it was hard to see, hard to find right-handed bats that we thought were guaranteed to be better than Brian De La Cruz," and that's just not true. And if they think that, that's just terrible player evaluation. I mean, Taylor Ward is a guy who hit 36 home runs last season. Obviously, his power numbers are down. I think he's only got 7 homers this season, but this is a guy who was one of the better power hitters in baseball last year. At the very least, what you're getting from him is a guy who doesn't chase. He's got one of the highest walk rates in baseball. And you also have that potential, that ceiling that he can hit, 30-plus bombs, be on that 30 home run pace. And the Phillies, he got traded for 3 prospects who aren't even in the Orioles' top 30 in their system now. So he basically got traded for nothing, and he's making some good money, but the Phillies should have made it work. This is a guy who could have perfectly fit in that 5th spot in the lineup. They could have went with Arraez, Turner, Harper, Schwarber, Taylor Ward, and then you'd be in trouble as a pitcher. You get through those, top 4, and then you got Taylor Ward waiting for you, and not an easy out at all. Of course, a guy who's capable, like I said, of hitting for a 30-plus home run pace. Obviously, Camden Yards, they moved that left field back, so it's been a little bit tougher to find the seats for him. He would have been a great pickup, and the Phillies, their farm is weak, but they easily could have fronted the cost for Taylor Ward. Joe Adele, he's not been a great player this year. He hit 37 homers last year. Again, he's fallen off, but he's still a great platoon bat. He still rakes against left-handed pitching, which is what, as I mentioned, the Phillies needed. They're one of the worst-hitting teams against left-handed pitching, and their solution was to get a left-handed bat. I mean, this is a team that they needed a right-handed power-hitting outfielder, and they traded for a left-handed contact-hitting infielder. And let's just talk about what they gave up as well. So they traded away Ramon Marquez, who was the Phillies' number 4 prospect. This is the guy who was on the verge of entering the top 100 across multiple systems. He's been a high riser in this organization, a quick riser. He's only 20 years old. He's got a 1.68 ERA this season in single A and high A. 93 strikeouts in 59 innings pitched for Marquez this season. He's got a 70 grade fastball. It's one of the best in the entire minor leagues. This is a guy who he was nowhere on the Phillies' radar coming into the season as a prospect, and he's blown away scouts. He's blown away the organization, and they trade him. And along with Marty Guerre, 23-year-old, who isn't much of a prospect. I mean, he's in Clearwater right now, so that's single A for the Phillies, and he's got ridiculous strikeout stuff. I mean, his ERA across college, across all other levels, it hasn't been good, but he's a guy who has a 15.8 strikeouts per 9 in the season. This is a reliever that the Phillies, could have used in a couple of years, maybe next year. He's a little bit on the older end for a new guy. But you get Caleb Kilian, you get Luis Arraez, who ultimately is what your lineup needed as a prototypical hitter. But the fit and the fact that they made no other moves to the lineup is where it gets interesting. Like I said, they should have traded for Taylor Ward. That would have been the perfect pickup for them. So I would grade that Luis Arraez deal. I would grade that around a B-, maybe a C+. It's tough. This is a guy that could have signed in the offseason. He got the same 1-year deal Adolis Garcia got. I think Arraez was quite obviously at the higher ceiling. And if you were willing to make the positional fit work for him now, why wouldn't you have been able to do that in the offseason? Harper was willing to go back to the outfield this whole time, but the Phillies opted to sign Adolis Garcia, hoping he'd turn the clock back 5 years. And at the end of the day, he was never near that. And he's injured now, of course. So, not that he was doing much before. But the Phillies outfield is still very weak. Brandon Marsh has been one of the worst hitters in baseball. He's got a 500 OPS in his last 30 games. Derek Hill, like I said, he's been really good, but how long is he going to keep that up? He's not playing every day. He's never been this good of a player, so it's kind of hard to expect him to produce at the level he's been producing at. Justin Crawford, he has been a negative WAR player as a Philly. So their outfield still has a lot of problems. And Mundo Sosa plays out there every once in a while, but he hasn't been good anywhere this year. So they solved the problem of needing a guy who didn't chase or didn't swing and miss, but they created a bunch of infield problems as well. Now they're kicking Harbor back out to right field. Arraez is going to play second. Bohm's going to play first, and Stott's going to play third. They're moving a Gold Glove caliber second baseman to third base, which he's played prior to last night 15 innings of third base in his career in the big leagues. And Bohm, he's not good no matter what. Bohm should have been gotten rid of at this deadline, is my take, because he's a well below average hitter. He's the worst OPS of any first baseman now. He's terrible in the field. He doesn't run well. He doesn't run the bases well. So he really brings nothing, but Dave Dombrowski likes him because he bats in a lot of runs. I mean, I'd hope he bats in a lot of runs. He's batting behind two of the best hitters in the game. So the Phillies should, like I said, if they traded for Taylor Ward, in that scenario, they would have dumped Bohm. I'm not sure where. I'm sure somebody would have taken him on, or you just bench him because he isn't. The Phillies just give him so many chances. I mean, he's had so many playoff runs batting cleanup where he's underperformed. He's had a lot of time behind Bryce Harper. He hasn't protected him well enough. He hasn't progressed enough in the field. He's now 30. He just turned 30 years old. This notion that he's like this young player who still has a lot in his game, I don't understand. He's been around. He's been in the big league since 2020. He hasn't become the guy he's supposed to be. I mean, the one year he had a really hot start and was an all-star starter, but he fell off after that. And this is just a guy who hasn't put together a full season of good enough defensive third base, a great offensive campaign all around. It's either one half's really good and one half's really bad. He just can't string together a full season. And the Phillies still trot him out there behind Luis Arraez now at cleanup. And it's going to be a lot of double plays and strikeouts and slamming his helmet. And it's just not the guy the Phillies need back there. So ultimately, the Phillies deadline, I think they started off hot. I mean, that Monday morning, they made those three acquisitions. I think they were trying on a starting pitcher. I mean, look at what Aaron Nola has been giving you all season. It hasn't been good. Andrew Painter hasn't been good. Phillies are in a dead heat in the wild card race. They're right there in line with the Padres, the Diamondbacks. The Marlins are hanging around. There's a lot of teams that are within striking distance, and the Phillies can't afford to falter the rest of the season. It's going to be a tight race. They're going to have to win a lot of games, and I'm not sure they did enough to push them over the edge. I mean, you still have your three aces, but Painter turned in one good start for being called up, and they decided that that was going to be enough, and they were going to bank on him turning in starts like that every fifth day. And Aaron Nola, who just gives up 3 homers a start, it feels like. I mean, it's never pretty with him, and he's 0-2, and you'll hang a breaking ball that gets hit 450 feet. It's just like, I think they definitely needed to add there. I think they could have added a right-handed bat. There were some starters who didn't get traded for much. I mean, look what the Padres did. That's a team you're competing with down the stretch. A team that they were talking about selling, and they go and trade for Robbie Ray and Casey Mize. Those are 2 really good starting pitchers. So the Phillies, and that's a great lineup. That's just waiting to wake up. And the Padres could easily outfinish the Phillies. I mean, the Diamondbacks didn't do much at the deadline, so I guess the Phillies have the edge there. Lars Nootbaar is not the big acquisition they think he is, but the Phillies haven't been playing good baseball for a while now. Since the All-Star break, they're one of the worst teams in the league. They've won 4 games in a row now, I believe. So looks like they're turning around, but they're playing the Nationals and the Orioles, so it's really not impressive. They went into a series where they were playing the 12-game losing streak Marlins and got swept, and they lost all 3 games in embarrassing fashion, to be quite honest with you. So I think there was a couple guys they still could have added, right? Like, I'm not saying that they're going to go out there and trade for 5 guys, but I think they could have, if they added a Taylor Ward, a Joe Adell, even a Lane Thomas, I would have been happy with. I would have felt a lot better about the length of this lineup. At the end of the day, we're still trotting out JT Realmuto. We're still sending out Brian De La Cruz, Derek Hill. These are just guys I don't really count on, and I don't think will deliver in October. We could have added a starter, like I said. Starting pitching is pretty expensive, but some of these guys didn't get traded for too much, and the Phillies definitely could have paid the price. Ultimately, I think that it was a solid deadline, but there was still a couple moves they could have made. I don't think it's enough to put them on par with the Dodgers. The Dodgers added the best pitcher in baseball. The Dodgers added Chris Bubich, who's a really solid lefty. So once again, they added two really good lefties. They obviously have Snell. That's the team that everyone's gunning for the Dodgers. That's the team that needs to be beat. And the Phillies are a left-handed heavy team, and they go out and add two left-handed starters. Obviously, they have Blake Snell. They have Tanner Scott on the back end of their bullpen. So they're a team that's built to beat the Phillies. They're easily gonna beat the Phillies. And the Braves didn't do much either. But the Brewers had a disappointing deadline, but still, they're a better team than the Phillies. The Cubs had a crazy deadline. They rebuilt their entire starting rotation. They did a lot, and I don't think the Phillies are better than the Cubs. I don't think they're better than the Brewers. I don't think they're better than the Dodgers. I think they're right on par with the Braves. They're a little worse. That division race is all but over. The Braves have run away with it here, but it's just hard to imagine that they're going to go on a run where they take down the Braves, then the Brewers, then the Dodgers. I don't think they're good enough to do that. Like I said, if they made a couple more additions, I think they could have been in the conversation to do that with a Taylor Ward or with a Robbie Ray as your fourth starter. But if you're going into a playoff series and you have to throw Aaron Nola or Andrew Painter out there and you have to have Alec Bohm batting fifth, I don't think it's good enough. So Dave Dombrowski once again disappoints at the deadline. And my next video will actually be talking about his tenure and grading some of the moves he's made and talking about how bad he's been and why he's the reason that the Phillies have not won a World Series. But thank you for watching.